On today's Locked On Jayhawks, we are previewing the big game on Saturday, Kansas and Oklahoma in Lawrence. Can the Jayhawks pull off the upset against the Sooners?
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Derek Johnson, you can hear me as well Monday through Friday from 3 to 6 p.m. on KLWN in Lawrence with Rock Chalk Sports Talk. Thanks for making Locked On Jayhawks your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get any of your podcasts. You can find us on our YouTube page too, where you can like and subscribe to our show. And on today's edition of the show, normally we do these on Fridays. But on Friday's episode, I think this week we might have a crossover episode, and then we're also going to have a KU Illinois preview coming at you at some point, either Friday or Saturday. So kind of a loaded end of the week here. This is your KU Oklahoma football preview officially for the week. First, we're brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business, and you want to be 100% certain that you have best qualified candidates available. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. All right, so KU takes on Oklahoma on Saturday, 11 a.m. Big Noon is going to be there, and it's one of the bigger games of the weekend. Obviously, if Kansas would have beat Oklahoma State, it would have even that much bigger, because if Kansas beats Oklahoma State a couple weeks ago, they're probably ranked in the top 20 right now. It's a top 20 showdown. I don't know, maybe this allows you to sneak under the radar a little bit more, I guess, against Oklahoma from their point of view. I doubt it, but still. This is a very big game. It's an opportunity for Lance Lippold and for this KU program to assert themselves at that next level of, not just being in the middle of the pack, not just being a bowl team, but being one that can beat some of these top teams in the Big 12 year in, year out. For Oklahoma, it's an opportunity for them to continue flexing their muscle and look like the best team in the Big 12 and college football playoff contender. Now, as far as the series, Oklahoma is on quite the winning streak right now. They lead the all-time series 80-27. And they're on an 18-game winning streak, which is the longest they've ever had in the series, and that is a current streak. It's been close games the last two. There are other games in the series you can go back on that randomly were close, like you have the Puka Williams freshman year in would that have been 2018, where Kansas went into Norman, and it was it was a fun game. I mean, Kyler Murray, that really helped his Heisman campaign with the stats he put up in that game. And Puka Williams went off. It was 55-40. There was the game in, I want to say it was the mid 2000s or 2010s with when Charlie Weiss was the head coach, and Blake Bell is kind of an ugly win for Oklahoma. They pulled away late. It was 34-13 or something, but it was closer than you'd think for a majority of that game. But for the most part, Oklahoma has dominated the series. It's just, the last two you've at least been competitive in that regard. And, both of those, well, really the one 2 years ago was a moral victory for KU. The one last year, not as much, and because you're starting to move away from the moral victory type of things. But, you look at the last 2 years ago, the game in Lawrence was the game where the power went off inside of Memorial Stadium during the first quarter. KU played a ball control offense. I think Oklahoma only got one or two possessions the entire first half. You had a 9.5 minute drive in the first half at one point, and I think you were up 14-7 or something at halftime. And then you ended up being up. Devin Neal had that fourth down at the one rushing touchdown to give you a lead at the end of the third, start of the fourth quarter, something like that. But then OU stormed back. They got up 28-23 at one point, and then they had the fourth down with 3 minutes left. OU went for it. It was a 4th and 3 at their own 45-yard line. And if you stop them, you have the ball down 5 on their end of the field with 3 minutes left with a lot of momentum. But they end up getting it on a play. You stopped them where it felt like maybe there should have been, a blown whistle for forward progress being stopped on the running back, but then Caleb Williams picks the ball away from his running back, which I guess still is a question, was it legal, was it not? And made a great play for what was called, I guess, and ended up getting the first down, and Oklahoma ends up scoring and winning 35-23. So that score ends up looking more than it actually was on the game, because you go back to last year's game, 52-42, KU hung in there to a certain extent, but last year's game never felt nearly as close as the game the year before did, even though last year you ended up losing by more points than the 2 years ago. But the last win overall for KU, you have to go back to 1997. That was a 20-17 win for KU in Lawrence, which actually at the time gave Kansas 3 in a row against the Sooners and 4 of 6 in the series. This will obviously be, your last time playing them, and who knows how long. And that's one of our top storylines. I mean, you don't know your next chance you're going to get to beat Oklahoma, right? I can't imagine Oklahoma's going to be chomping at the bit to put you on their non-conference schedule, and they're probably going to want to play cupcakes because they're going to play a very difficult SEC schedule that they're not going to really need to beef up their non-con. And even if they do, they'd probably be looking toward, okay, maybe we'll play like 2 kind of bad schools and then we'll play like a Notre Dame or something like that, right? But the other big storyline here is, what is Jalon Daniels' status? To this point, it feels like I would be a bit surprised if Jalon Daniels was the starting quarterback, but I'm also, recording this on a Thursday, and things have been so fluid and weird with this whole situation that I guess you never know. But based on how Lance Lippold talked about it earlier this week, I would be a bit surprised if he did end up starting the game. Now, if he does play, you end up with a storyline of arguably the top 2 quarterbacks in the Big 12 going at each other, Dillon Gabriel versus Jalon Daniels, and you get the question of who's the best, who's number 1. Unfortunately, we haven't seen that matchup, right? We didn't get to see it last year. Jalon Daniels has never started and finished a game against Oklahoma in his career. Didn't start against them last year, was injured. Year before, it was Jason Bean, who was the starter at the time. And the year before that, Jalon Daniels did start against OU as a true freshman. He was like 17 years old, but he ended up getting injured in the game. Like, KU's offensive line gave up like 9 sacks. So just kind of a weird, I guess, stat or nugget there on that one. Another storyline here is OU trying to maintain top 5 status, keep pace with the top college football playoff contenders. You come off a game, if you're OU, where you win a little bit closer for comfort over UCF, a team that Kansas beat by 30 points a couple weeks ago. And will they bounce back? Will they have a much better performance this week than they did last week? Because that would not be great for KU. You are in a bit of a sense here where you are playing up in competition. You need to play an A game. You need them to probably play a B or a C game, right? That's kind of part of when you're pulling upsets like this. You need to win the turnover battle and things like that. So what's the likelihood of that? What's the likelihood of them playing down a little bit after they just did a little bit the week before? I don't know. We'll wait and see. It's also KU homecoming. You'd imagine there'll be a good crowd in attendance. Now, at the time of recording, I don't believe it's sold out, which I was a little bit surprised on. I definitely thought it would be a sellout, but it did look like it was close to selling out. I'd imagine by game time it will be a sellout. I'd imagine it'll be a good crowd. Now, I imagine Oklahoma will have a good visiting crowd in attendance, though, too, but it is homecoming, so I guess that's a storyline here, too. Now, Kansas is trying to score the biggest win, what would be of the Lance Lippold era. You could argue the 2021 Texas game for the ripple effect it had, for the repercussions it had, but this would be it. If you could win this game, this would score your biggest win in the Lance Lippold era at KU. It would assert yourself as being a real team year in and year out. It would assert you as possibly taking that next step and next level as a program of not just being, a team that's going to be pretty good and make a bowl game, but a team that can be up near the top in the upper half of the conference and, the top 3 to 5 of the conference on a given year. And that's what you're trying to do in a game like this. You're looking for your first, I guess, real statement win. You've had a lot of really good wins and a lot of good things you've done as a program. Now you're looking for that first statement win. This would provide that opportunity to do just that. And you can go even further than that. This might be the biggest win if KU were to get it since they won the Orange Bowl in 2008. Now, maybe there's some other ones you want to point to, but I don't know. Maybe you could even, if you wanted to single this out into being the best regular season win, what's another regular season win that you would put up with this? Or maybe you would throw out a win against Missouri or Kansas State just from the, I guess, rivalry nature or aspect of those games. But would you have to go back to 1995 winning at Colorado, right? I don't know. Would you have to go back to when you beat Oklahoma in 1984, This would be a massive monumental win for KU, especially with the extra attention coming with Big Noon if you were able to get it. And, KU also coming off a bye is an interesting storyline. Boy, did that help last year. You beat Oklahoma State. Devin Neal, did he look fresh? He had 300 total yards. Jason Bean looked extra prepared, and hopefully it helps KU get extra prepared in this one. We're going to get on to our Oklahoma scouting report, our matchups of the game, and which Jayhawks could stick out to soar in this ball game. First, this episode of the show is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the most fun that you can have getting in on the action with more or less on some of these different, games. And you can do it with the KU Oklahoma game. You can do it with any of the other college football games, NFL, MLB with the World Series, NBA getting started now. I mean, now is honestly the perfect time to get into PrizePicks because we're having all these sports going on. It's really simple to play. You can make your picks. You can submit your entry in less than 60 seconds. So you're not having to toy around with it. And you have quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types are what makes PrizePicks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. I love it. You can do it too. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code LOCKEDONCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege with code LOCKEDONCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Daily sport or PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy. All right, continuing on, let's get to our Oklahoma scouting report in this one. So OU obviously comes in at 7-0, whereas you come in at 5-2. Offensively, Sooners are number 5 on ESPN SP+. KU, conversely, is 88th on the defensive side of the ball there in that metric. But they're averaging over 43 points per game. That's 4th in the country. They've scored 34 or less in 3 of their 4 Big 12 games, though. So they have been a bit below that, right? 31 against UCF, 34 against Texas. So maybe – if you can hold them to 34, I almost view that as a success. Like, you're going to have to probably put up more than that. But then again, their defense is really good. We'll get into that in a second. Dillon Gabriel has been the top quarterback in the conference so far, and he's gotten an array of weapons in Drake Stoops, Adriel Anthony, Jaleel Farouk, Nick Anderson. They spread it out, all 4 of those guys. Like, I don't know that they have a Marvin Mims type guy or you want to go back further, like a Ryan Broyles type guy, but all 4 of those are very adept and can make you pay. It's a balanced running attack. They have 5 different players who have 100 or more rushing yards, 3 different players who have 200 or more rushing yards, but none of them have more than 308 rushing yards. Doesn't seem like they have that super dynamic guy like an Eric Gray a year ago. And they're just 10th right now in the Big 12 in rushing yards per carry. So this hasn't been a great rushing team, maybe as good as it was last year, but they have been an elite passing team and overall an elite offense. Defensively, they are number 23 on ESPN SP+. KU is the number 13 offense. This is going to be maybe the most intriguing matchup of the game, although, part of that weight was risen by Jalon Daniels, which you don't possibly have now. But OU's given up just 16.1 points per game. That's 13th in the country. Nobody has dropped more than 30 on them. That makes it really tough going into this game. Only UCF and Texas have even gotten more than 20 points against them. All the other 5 games, it's been 20 or less. And Texas was the only team to even cross 400 yards against Oklahoma. Nobody else has even been to 400 plus against them. They have a Studley linebacker core. They've got athletes all over. The Finney Stutzman is playing like an All-American for them at the linebacker position. And that leads to them having a strong run defense. Iowa State was the only team to even average 4 or more yards per carry against Oklahoma. Even Texas, which we saw what Texas did against Kansas. Texas had 3.9 yards per carry against OU, and they've only given up 2 total rushing touchdowns all season long as the defense. They also take advantage of mistakes. 12 interceptions this year. That's tied first in the league. Maybe somewhere you can make up for things. Special teams, they're only number 95 on ESPN SP+. KU's been 10th. They missed a few field goals last week. You probably have to have a big special teams and turnover game if you do want to win this one. Now, let's get to our matchups of the game. First down, the Kansas pass rush has to win without blitzing against the OU offensive line. So the OU offensive line has been fine this year, but they haven't been elite to this point. They haven't been great. Right now, Oklahoma ranks 60th in the country on Pro Football Focus in pass blocking grades. That's about middle of the pack. And so you're going to have opportunities to win one-on-one. But Dillon Gabriel and the receivers are really good. Gabriel gets the ball out really quickly. So, last year KU was playing a lot of off coverage. I don't think you can do that this game. You have to be able to disrupt them at the line of scrimmage because it's twofold here. It'll give you an opportunity to win with your pass rush against an OU offensive line, which has been, fine, not great. And if you're just giving them a bunch of big cushions, they're just going to tear you apart and throw quickly, and it won't matter what your pass rush does. So part of this has to be schematic. You do have to meet them, I think, at the line of scrimmage. I don't know if they will, but I think you kind of have to. But anyway, KU needs to and should try to obviously throw the occasional blitz out there and disrupt the game. But in a game that you do need to win in base, because if they're going to be playing hurry up, it's going to be harder to communicate calls. And you need those extra guys back there to cover. That kind of means that your front, so those four regulars on the defensive line, they just have to win. You're going to have to be able to win. And Kansas has had a lot of games here where they have won without blitzing. Now, Oklahoma State was not one of them, but a lot of the other games they have. I think there is some reason to believe they can in this game. Like I said, OU 60th in pass blocking grade, KU's 43rd in pass rush grade. That number was near the top 30. It was in the 30s prior to the Oklahoma State game when you had your worst game of the year there. And Kansas is also second in the Big 12 in sacks with 19 of them. They're only one behind first. So there is reason to believe you can maybe get this done. But yeah, Dylan Gabriel, it's not just that he gets the ball out quickly. He's also mobile and can scramble. So it has to be a disciplined pass rush in how you get to him. He ran for a ton of yards last year against Kansas. He ran for a ton of yards, last week or over the course of the season, more than you'd think. So it is kind of a tough thing that Kansas has to deal with, and they've struggled with containing quarterbacks who can scramble. So that is a worry as well. Second down, who will run the football better? One way to make first down, the pass rush, easier for Kansas on defense is the KU run defense versus the OU run offense. Because if you end up getting them in third and media, or 3rd and 3 and 3rd and 4, it's going to be a lot harder to predict what they're doing. If you get them in 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, defensive line can know what to expect and pin their ears back and be ready to rush the passer. OU ran for a bunch of yards against Kansas last year. Eric Gray ran all over them, but Dylan Gabriel had a big rushing game, right? It was just everybody ran over them. Right now, though, OU ranks just in the 60s on run block grade on Pro Football Focus too. So in addition to the pass block grade, run block grades in the 60s. They don't have that Eric Gray type back, like a lot of good players, but Eric Gray was, one of those like dynamic running backs. Kansas, though, is just 105th in the country on Pro Football Focus in run defense. They were just 96th in tackling grades. This has been a struggle continued this year. They've given up 200 plus rushing yards in 3 straight Big 12 games. If KU can win on run plays in this game, a lot more than they have been over the last 3 games, there's going to be those more 3rd and longs. And when you look at it, typically like 3rd and 7 pluses in the NFL, it's converted about 30%. I know it's different in college football, but if you're turning them into an offense that is only going to convert 30 to 35% of their third downs, that's a much different conversation in how this game goes. Meanwhile, on the flip side, OU is 12th on Pro Football Focus in run defense. They're giving up just 3.4 yards per carry. So they've had a really stout, strong run defense. OU actually did okay here, though not great on run defense against KU last season. They gave up 42 points. They did allow 165 rushing yards, so it wasn't like a huge total. KU did have 4.7 yards per carry, but it was still successful for KU. I don't think they got into as much of a rhythm, though. I think if you asked KU to redo their game plan last year with as explosive as the OU offense was, maybe they would have tried more ball control, typically, or similar to how they did in 2021, try to keep the OU offense off the field, try to maybe disrupt some of their, rhythm of being on the field a while. But KU's coming off their worst running game of the season. You had, under 100 rushing yards against Oklahoma State. You had just 4 of your 19 first downs running the football. So we'll see what KU can do running the football against a good rushing defense. You're going to have to run the football well to both help your defense and obviously help your offense as well. Third down is money downs. Oklahoma's 6th in the nation in success rate on 3rd and 4th downs. KU's defense ranks just 104th on success rate in 3rd and 4th downs. That could be a problematic matchup here. But the Jayhawks are 13th in the Big 12 in 3rd down conversion defense. They are 9th in the Big 12 on 4th down conversion defense. They've struggled in both areas, especially on 3rd downs. This would be a great game for that number to revert a little bit and for you to find some sort of success. I don't know if it comes from some sort of changing what play calls you're doing in those situations, changing the packages of who's out there, or maybe some personnel stuff, or if it's just I don't know what goes into it. But, they're going to have to do something different against a really good offense because they've really struggled on 3rd down. Meanwhile, for KU on offense, they're 20th on 3rd and 4th down success rate. So they've been really good on offense, whereas the OU defense is 14th in the country, including being 1st in the Big 12 in opponent 3rd down rate. KU has the first or the best 3rd down rate of any team in the Big 12. OU has the best 3rd down rate defensively of any team in the Big 12 at just 28%. So you really do have a clash there. I will say, though, on 3rd and 4th down, it's been a tale of 2 stories for KU. Number 1 3rd down rate offensively in the Big 12, but they're last in the Big 12 in 4th down rate. Now, is that just something where, I don't know, like you would think if you're a good 3rd down offense, you should be a good 4th down offense. There's a lot of similarities there. I kind of feel like the fourth down offense being last in the Big 12 is maybe just a product of a small sample size. And so that the more that you go for it on fourth down, it's going to revert closer to your third down numbers. Maybe that means Kansas is in store to have like a big game or two down the road here of, going 3 for 3 on fourth down or something, boosting up the numbers. Maybe this is the game that can happen. But yeah, that's going to have to be a better number because I'd imagine you're going to have to go for a couple fourth downs if you want to win a game like this. Fourth down is the turnover battle. Oklahoma's forced multiple turnovers in 5 of their 7 games. They have a Big 12 best 12 interceptions, tied with Iowa State. They did not force a single turnover, though, against UCF last week, and they almost lost as a result. So if you keep them away from turning the ball over, if you don't turn the ball over, it's pretty clear that, yeah, they maybe didn't have as much success. OU also has just 5 turnovers on offense. They don't really give you many opportunities to take advantage of turnovers on that end. Now, on the flip side, we saw KU lose to Oklahoma State because they were -2 in turnovers. If they were even in turnovers with the Cowboys, they win the game. If they were -1 in turnovers, they might have won the game. It was just the second time this season that Kansas turned the ball over twice on offense. He lost the game. It was also just the second time, too, by the way, this season that Kansas forced none. So you had just the second time this season, both of those things clashing at the same time. It was a low-end game in turnovers for you at both ends. Low-end game maybe in turnover luck or whatever you want to call it, and that's what led to the loss. But Kansas this year is 3-0 when forcing multiple turnovers, and all 3 of those games happened at home in Lawrence. Win the turnover battle. Let's get to our player matchup. Hawks to soar in this one. First, this episode of the show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. There really isn't. You have NBA going on right now, getting started. You have college basketball right around the corner. College football, NFL, obviously mainstays at this point of the year. The World Series getting started in baseball. NHL, if you're into hockey, is getting going right now. There literally is no better time to get in on FanDuel. You can get in on the KU action. We're going to get to our Hawks to soar here, and those might be players you want to keep an eye on for some of their props because you can get in on the props on FanDuel. You can get in on the spreads. You can get in on the over-unders and more. KU's getting like 10.5 points right now. So if you don't know, like, you're like, I don't know if Kansas is going to win the game, but I think they can keep it close. Boom, you can get 10.5 points. There you go. You can do all that at FanDuel.com/lockedon. Kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL. All right, our player matchup in this one is Jase Medical against the KU slot. So when you're looking at some of the Pro Football Focus grades of the Oklahoma defense, it kind of divvies to where the defensive line is good. The linebackers are good, though one of the linebackers struggles in coverage. One of the corners is really good. The safeties, maybe the other corner, have struggled a bit. And then Jase Medical is kind of a safety / nickel / slot corner hybrid based on where he plays. He's been amazing so far this season. He's graded over 80 on Pro Football Focus, which is really tough to get to. He has an 84 coverage grade too. He's helped them against the run as kind of a safety hybrid. So McCullough's awesome. Now, Luke Grimm, meanwhile, is mostly your slot receiver, and he's really good too. So that should be a fun matchup. But it's also that we haven't seen Grimm have the same connection so far with Bean as he had with Daniels, whereas Bean has maybe had a better connection with like Trevor Wilson than he has with Jalon Daniels. So kind of interested to see if that can get going in this game, but that should be a really fun matchup with a couple of really good players. As far as our Hawks to soar players that I think can have big games or maybe set up to do so for Kansas, Mason Fairchild, the tight end. So Jared Kanik and Danny Stutzman are elite linebackers for Oklahoma. Stutzman on his way probably to All-American status so far this year. Kanik is a younger player. He's actually from the state of Kansas in which he was recruited over. Heck of an athlete. Young player, though, he's struggled when you look at his Pro Football Focus grade in pass coverage. He's been good overall, but in pass coverage, he's had some struggles. The 2 safeties for OU are graded overall at a 49 and a 56 on Pro Football Focus. That means you might have some opportunities in the seam and over the middle of the defense. Well, enter Mason Fairchild, who just had his best game of the year a couple weeks ago in the game against Oklahoma State. And last season against Oklahoma was really good too. He had 6 catches for 106 yards and 2 scores against the Sooners I think he's going to have another big game this one against Oklahoma. Defensively, I'm going with Kenny Logan. Oklahoma's probably going to get to the third level a lot more than he'd like because of how good their offense is, which means your safeties have to make secure tackles. That means a lot of opportunities for Kenny Logan to make tackles. But beyond that, you're looking at a guy like this, an upperclassman player. He's made key plays for Kansas when they've needed it. You think of the pick six against BYU. He can make a game-changing play on special teams with a big kick return in a game like this against OU, who hasn't had a great special team so far. OU hasn't had a great run game or tight end game so far, so he might have okay matchups in those regards too, and you're going to need him to play a big game and maybe come up with one of those big turnovers going back to that matchup if Kansas wants to find a way to sneak out a win. That'll do it for this episode of Locked On Jayhawks, previewing the Kansas-Oklahoma game. We'll have a crossover episode with our Locked On counterparts from Oklahoma. Later this week, we'll also have a preview of the KU-Illinois game on the basketball court for KU's first exhibition game on Sunday at some point later this week, too. This has been Locked On Jayhawks. You can find us anywhere you get any of your podcasts or like and subscribe to our show on our YouTube page. Have a great rest of your day. We'll see you next time. Later.